could make the case that maybe we shouldn't even be there at all because we don't need it. We have a lot of oil. Maybe we're the number one producer anywhere in the world times two.
No, your ears are not deceiving you. Trump actually had the audacity to say that about the Strait of Hormuz after he decided to invade Iran. Not anyone else, him. And his comments were a tacit warning to U.S. allies that they better get involved with his war with Iran too, because they're going to be more hurt by the Strait of Hormuz being closed than us if we choose to stop trying to defend it. And I guess he felt compelled to say that after other world leaders basically told him to fuck off because, as the German defense minister put it, this is not our war. We have not started it. But Trump's asking them to bail him out because he very clearly didn't expect this to happen. The New York Times reports, at a meeting in the Oval Office last week, a frustrated Mr. Trump pressed General Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, about why the United States could not immediately reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and it had to be explained to him that it doesn't work that way. Even one Iranian soldier or militia member zipping across the narrow neck of the strait in a speedboat could fire a mobile missile right into a slow-moving supertanker or plant a limpet mine on its hull. Yeah, but you see, they were totally prepared for this despite how it looks, and Trump's energy secretary, Chris Wright, gave an answer that just screamed confidence when he was asked about this in an NBC News interview.
There's a big debate over whether you all were prepared for what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. If you were prepared, why is the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed right now?
Because it's right near the Iranian shoreline.
Yeah, I mean, that might have been a good reason to not invade them in the first place, but rest assured, everything's going according to plan.
This mission was carefully planned out. It's been superbly executed. On the other side, we'll be in a much better place.
Whew. So I am really relieved to hear him say that, because I was starting to think, admittedly, that this was a complete and utter shit show. But thankfully, he says it's being superbly executed, and it only looks like Iran is clapping our cheeks because the fake news media wants us to think that Iran is clapping our cheeks. And that's basically what Trump said in a March 14th post on Truth Social. And a day later, in an unnecessarily long screed, he even accused the U.S. media of colluding with the Iranian government to make it seem like Iran is doing better than they are. And complaints by Trump about media bias led to FCC Chair Brendan Carr threatening to revoke the licenses of broadcasters if they don't, quote, correct course, meaning that if they report the truth about Iran's war and give viewers an accurate assessment of how poorly it's going, then they're going to be penalized by the federal government. And I don't know about everybody else, but that also really screams confidence to me. The fact that they're threatening the media to cover this positively, that tells us it's going real well, right? But even if they're able to successfully coerce media outlets into pretending like we're winning, it's not going to change the bleak reality for them. Our own intelligence confirms that the Iranian government is not at risk of collapse, even though Donald Trump naively thought that it would be easy peasy. A source told Axios that Trump wanted to invade Iran just because, but grossly overestimated his ability to topple the regime short of sending in ground troops. But Trump was high on his own supply after last summer's quick strikes in Iran and January's abduction of the Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro. Quote, he saw multiple decisive quick victories with extraordinary military competence. In other words, Trump thought that the war in Iran would be an easy side quest for some bonus XP ahead of the midterms, but he didn't realize that he was severely underleveled for this mission. But that's also true for our partner Israel, who's dangerously close to running out of interceptor missiles because, get this, they never replenished their stockpiles after they were depleted from last year's 12-day war with Iran, which is insane. And now that Iran is using cluster munitions, their stockpile is being drained even faster than expected, which is why, as Dropsite News reports, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff has been privately requesting to negotiate with Iran in order to presumably end the war, but the Iranians have been ghosting him. But publicly, Trump told NBC News it's actually Iran that's reaching out to negotiate for a ceasefire with them, but he's the one who's not ready to talk to them. But unfortunately for him, nobody's buying that line of bullshit because he very clearly had no idea what he got himself into. But don't take it from me. Take it from a U.S. senator who has additional insight from closed-door briefings, which confirms what we already know, that Trump has no fucking idea what he's doing. Chris Murphy explains Trump has lost control of the war because he badly misjudged Iran's ability to retaliate, because he explains Trump somehow didn't think that Iran would close the Strait of Hormuz, which is, again, insane, and he doesn't have the slightest idea how to get it open again, clearly. Now, Trump probably assumed that the Navy would escort oil tankers, but Murphy explains that that would require our entire Navy, and it poses a risk to our ships since Iran is using both mines and drones. Moreover, Trump thought that taking out their missiles would suffice, but failed to realize that wars these days are mostly fought via drones, and Iran has a virtually endless supply of easy-to-produce Shahad drones that are hard to shoot down, which is why the U.S. had to basically copy Iranian technology to match them on the battlefield. But Murphy goes on to explain that another thing that Trump didn't anticipate was wider regional war in this conflict, because Hezbollah, an Iranian proxy, is retaliating against Israel in defense of Iran, and Israel launched a full-blown invasion of Lebanon in response, where they're using chemical weapons, which is illegal, of course, but I mean, that's never stopped them before, and they're also displacing hundreds of thousands of civilians, and as Chris Murphy put it, Iran and its proxies can create chaos indefinitely. Now, I find his framing pretty despicable and blatantly Western chauvinistic, because it's America and its proxies who are causing chaos in the region, and Iran and its proxies are simply responding to what we started. Nonetheless, his broader point is still important, and he says that America and Israel are basically being stretched too thin, thinner than Trump realized, and that the United States very clearly isn't ready for a long-term war with Iran. But the same can't be said about Iran, because they're apparently very ready. And their foreign policy advisor told CNN that if they have to defend themselves, they can do so basically for as long as they need to.
The United States says it's drastically degraded the Iranian military, the capabilities as far as missiles is concerned, drones is concerned. How much longer can you do this?
That is one of the false narratives that the United States government is producing. Iranian military is quite strong, as you see, because they have the motivation, they have the arms that they need, which are produced in Iran. As a matter of fact, we are not dependent on any other country for weapons and arms.
So your side is ready for a long war if the United States and Israel choose that. Do you consider this an existential threat to the Islamic Republic?
It is an existential threat to the Islamic Republic, and therefore we have to stay with full might.
So they're apparently at an advantage, one, because they've been preparing for this for a really long time, especially since last year's 12-day war, and two, because they're able to quickly produce everything that they need domestically, meaning that they can beat us at a war of attrition if need be, because the U.S. and Israel are going to deplete their stockpiles before they do. Now, that's not to say that they're not taking damage, of course, because they are. Tehran is being carpet bombed, and around 1,400 people have died, including 300 children, which is not something that you can just gloss over. Like, this is a catastrophe. But Iran's goal here clearly is to show that they are capable of defending themselves in order to deter future U.S. aggression after this war is over. Like, they want this to be the war that ends all wars, so they don't have to worry about an invasion again. Now, it's why other Iranian officials are basically saying they're even ready for a ground invasion, because as bloody as that would be, they presumably think it would be worth it if they're able to show that they can hold their own and prove that they're not to be fucked with. And that's why they're not open to ceasefire negotiations, even though Trump is saying that they are, because they feel like now is the time to prove themselves. And also because they simply can't trust anything Trump says, so why negotiate with somebody who's just a bad faith actor?
Is your side seeking, or will you seek, a ceasefire with the United States at this point in time, and with Israel?
I don't see any room for diplomacy anymore, because Donald Trump has been deceiving others and not keeping with his promises. And we experienced it in 2 times of negotiations, that while we were engaged in negotiation, they struck us.
Yeah, and who can blame them? They did negotiate with us before. They agreed to the JCPOA and were in compliance with it, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, that is, until Trump decided to unilaterally withdraw from that and attack them. And why would you trust somebody who isn't even agreeing to trade agreements that he just made with European allies? That person is not worth even talking to. Not to mention, Israel has continuously violated every so-called ceasefire that they've negotiated. So from the Iranians' perspective, they know that there's nothing to be gained by negotiating with the U.S. and Israel and letting their guard down. So in their minds, it's rational to continue the war, especially because they do seem to have the advantage. So their options are either A, end the war now and risk future attacks, or B, keep fighting, possibly win, and demonstrate that they're capable of defending themselves so the next US president thinks twice before invading them. Short-term pain for long-term gain, as the Trump regime would say. But from Trump's perspective, what should he do, since it's very clearly not going well for him? Well, he can pull out and try to save face and do his best to, I guess, badger the media into pretending like it was a huge success, or he can try to dig in and get some actual wins in this war in order to change the narrative. I genuinely don't know how he would pull that off, because the longer he stays in, the worse things get for him here at home, at least economically, with gas prices and eventually grocery prices going through the roof. But I mean, if he's able to get some measure of success, the mainstream media will glaze him for that, and he knows that they will, because the mainstream media, of course, has advertisements from defense contractors, so they want to praise him for this. It's just that he's not giving them anything to work with. So, there's also the sunken cost fallacy, not to mention that, this has been an effective distraction from the Epstein files. So in some ways, you can already argue that he's gotten at least something out of this war with Iran, but he wants to be perceived as victorious, unquestionably victorious, but that doesn't really seem possible. So who knows what's going to happen? Like, we don't know what he's going to do next, because not even he knows what he's going to do next, seeing as how he very clearly doesn't have a plan. But one thing I can say with certainty is that he will become more dangerous as his desperation grows. So be on the lookout for that, because nothing is more dangerous than an unhinged narcissist with power who thinks that something isn't going well for him.
Do yourself a favor and click the join button on YouTube to become a member. Because Mike's doing a great job getting to watch his videos before everyone else is tremendous. Many people are saying this. Join today, folks. You won't regret it.